Hi everyone, Cold the Day Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Trippie Redd album, Pegasus. This is the newest full-length LP from Ohio native Trippie Redd, his third commercial release and his biggest statement to date with 26 tracks and 74 minutes of runtime. I was highly skeptical of the length going into this because of how much of a rough ride Trippie's last record was, so I was hoping for something a lot more planned out and maybe focused this time around, and I guess I sort of did get the focus because generally the tracks on this thing are pretty sentimental, sensual, even bordering on romantic, or at least attempting that. I mean, love isn't exactly a new topic for Trippie Redd given his emo trap credentials, but Pegasus definitely stands out as the most euphoric and feel-good project in his catalog, I think, just in terms of what it's clearly going for. So the direction of this thing, the concept is there for sure, but it still remains that Trippie's execution leaves a lot to be desired, continuing to squander the raw talent showcased on his debut as well as his early viral mixtapes. Overall, Pegasus is somehow less vocally impressive than nearly everything Trippie has done so far, and on top of that, there is absolutely nothing about it that justifies this runtime. For one, it's not that versatile. The production here ranges from bland, wavy trap beats to beats that barely sound like they've even been properly mixed. The claps on Personal Favorite with Rich the Kid are ridiculously high. On Never Change with Future, we have Future's auto-tune vocals, deafeningly loud strings, this just hard-hitting trap beat on top of this blobby bass, and all of it is roaring as loud as possible. There's no balance whatsoever. Then for some reason the second Future feature on this project sounds like he's delivering his verse through a drive-through speaker. Then with Hell Rain, everyone's vocals are so distant and washed out and slathered with reverb. There's really no presence to anyone's performance here, especially Lil Wayne, who sounds like he's trying to stay out of the way as much as possible for some reason. Trippie Redd and Chris Brown on their respective track mix like Sour Patch Kids on pizza. The lyrics are terrible and the gap in vocal talent between both of them is plain as day. Lil Mosey is a snooze fest. Then Busta Rhymes, while I don't dislike his performance, he just seems like a really strange fit on a record like this. His style, his bravado, his lyrical technicality doesn't exactly lend itself to a project like this. Young Thug is probably the best feature and most fitting on the entire record, but it's not like this is one of his best appearances ever. In fact, it sounds like he's trying to downplay his shit as much as possible as not to outshine Trippie Redd too much. So the beats and the guests are just not enough to keep this project on life support, so I think it goes without saying that Trippie himself isn't really doing the job either. I mean, at least a third of the time on this record, he barely sounds like himself. There was a track on the front end that sounded like he was doing a Travis Scott ripoff. Meanwhile, Good Morning, I think, is his best Playboi Carti impression. Oomp's Revenge Part 2 is pretty much like God's Father era Lil B, and there's at least a handful of tracks on this thing where he's just doing a Future ripoff, really biting Future's vocal inflections. The song Take One sounds like a reference track meant for Future. And not that Trippie Redd has ever been considered a god-tier lyricist or anything, but going on for 70 plus minutes just exposes how thin Trippie Redd's lyrical ideas run. There are so many throwaway refrains and hooks on this thing, from Just You and Me Baby 1-2 to the track We, whose chorus is literally we. Plus there are all sorts of bars on this thing that stand out for all the wrong reasons. Like on Spaceships, where Trippie Redd mentions flying in two bitches from overseas, they both from Portugal, they both Portuguese. Yeah, that is kind of how that works. Plus, repeatedly on this thing, Trippie's similes are just bottom of the barrel. Take the song Take One again, for example, where he says he's like free like a mason, which in isolation is not the worst bar on the planet, but I'm telling you, that is about as good as Trippie's simile game gets on this project. Again, not that versatile, dynamic, or even super flashy lyricism is required to make a hip-hop track or an emo trap track good, but if you're gonna go 74 minutes, your ambitions as an artist should be showing. And in the case of Trippie Redd and Pegasus, it's just not. The most unlikely thing about Pegasus, though, is that many of the songs here actually segue into each other pretty nicely, or at least smoothly. It's weird there'd be so much effort and focus on making that the case despite there being so many mixing flaws and half-baked songwriting, but okay. Yeah, I'm really just struggling to find anything to compliment on this record outside of maybe a handful of choruses that kind of got my head nodding, or a couple of decent beats here and there. This thing is just bloated as hell and crumbling under the weight of its own size. It's like building a skyscraper out of styrofoam. I'm feeling a strong 1 to a light 2 on this. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you could check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Trippie Redd, Pegasus, forever.